All righty. Well, I'm going to go back to a little screen share here. Good morning to all. I'll get that. I've just got a little show and tell to maybe kind of help us organize our thoughts. Um, what the reason, and I talked to Andy about doing this, but it's concerned me for quite a while because I do get the contact stuff coming in on the website that it comes both to me and to Andy. Uh, Anybody who comes on board, we don't have any process whatsoever currently for people who are new, or even for current people who feel like they're unsure about certain aspects of what we do. So um, part of what I would like to do today is to see if we can't collectively kind of think this through. I've been taking notes for a couple of months and then working on some stuff. It's not posted on the website yet um, in this direction, but um, always a believer that the collective mind is more effective than any one of us thinking about this. Um, as I think all of us that are currently on are aware, especially post COVID, what we're doing has gotten to be a little more complex, and we've added more layers to what we're expecting of people. And we're also, working on adding some members and trying to get them up to speed so they don't feel like they're drowning as quickly as we can. Um, so I know some of you are newer. I think Matt and I have, and Thea probably have been here since near the beginning. So it's been a while since we were new, but we all kind of struggled through the what are we all about thing. But those of you who are newer, I think this morning can be especially helpful just because your memories of what was overwhelming when you came on board are newer. Um, I do want to clarify we are recording this because I was contacted by a few people that said they wanted to be part of this but couldn't be here today. And Andy wanted very much to see what was going on. So if you have any objections to being recorded, you're welcome to turn off your camera or whatever makes you comfortable. Um, I do have a very loose structure, but then after we're going through that loose structure, um, we'll just kind of open it up for any comments about anything and everything, not even specifically related to training or newbies. So everybody ready to go? Okay. So currently, the only things we have set up for helping people out are the Wednesday night nets, which are what they are, which is a radio net. There's some information that we can share easily, and some things we just can't do. Like, of course, images and text don't happen. EugeneEmComm.org is there for us just to provide kind of a central posting place for information. We do have the Neighborhood Radio Communications Response Guide, which I know many of you were, part of the process we went through recently to kind of read through that together and find places that needed revision.
I was not a part of that. I found the meetings
Ah,
tedious and picky and just irritating, and I couldn't stand them, and I left that meeting.
yeah,
There's two meetings.
yeah, they went lengthy. They went on forever, and a lot of it was, minor details. Definitely got down in the weeds. I know that around town we have different levels of participation in our neighborhood organizations. And Thea, I have admired for a long time what you guys do in Friendly area. Northeast, we're very loose in some respects, but there's some other areas. For example, we do our second Saturday uh, trainings and sometimes gatherings, but we have a wide variety throughout town. I think some people get more support than others with regards to neighborhood help. What we don't currently have is any set training or orientation procedure. And something I've discovered as I've been thinking about this, I don't think there's any commonly held understanding of what new people need. And that's part of why we're here today. Um, so I'm hoping that all of you are willing and anxious to kind of pitch in this morning. Again, this is largely to gather ideas. Anything that you're wanting to contribute just as part of the Zoom, uh, strongly encourage you to do that. If you've got other ideas that you'd rather type than talk, please feel free to use the chat. And also in the chat, I have placed a link to the comments place for eugeneemcom.org and an email address that works for that too. And that email address also goes to me and Andy. That's info@eugeneemcom.org. And I'm thinking if you have thoughts that just don't fit into this morning's format, where you want to go into more detail, please feel free to send things via one of those methods. And the goal is to have a whole bunch of ideas we can gather together to start forming a um, structure to provide training and support for people. Okay, first idea, first thought, first prompt, and especially for those of you who are newer, I was just curious as to what things, when you first came on board, did you feel were your greatest deficit or the greatest unknown? And that being said and projected, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share here, and we'll open up the floor. Anybody thoughts about what you felt was your greatest area of ignorance when you first came on board?
I'll start. My greatest area of ignorance was my own interpersonal skills. So, yeah, with my autistic deficit, I can set up a WinLink node and run people through that. I can set up the fundamentals of a TNC, but my interpersonal skills just sorely lacking. I have an innate inability to see things from other people's perspective. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, well, so basically finding a way to successfully connect in whatever group things we do.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
and getting other people involved. The sheer lack of interest publicly seems to be, yeah.
yeah. And for those of you who are newer, Matt, when I first came on board, was net control. I don't know how long were you net control, 18 months or something, longer than that?
About a year at least. Yeah.
Yeah, good chunk of time. So he was doing a lot of interacting with all of us. And Matt was my first introduction to the larger group was on the Wednesday night nets. Anybody else things that you made you uncomfortable or uncertain when you first came on board? Yeah,
Hey, I'm just not sure I belong in the group because there's a limited amount that I can do with you or for you, and I wonder because I'm a kind of a full-time caretaker and everything else, so I can't be a reliably scheduled person but I wonder if there's any point in someone like me. I would like to be able to connect and talk to people and maybe relay messages to hear what's going on and to understand the organization so that I can contribute to whatever extent I can. But so what role is there for kind of marginally connected people? And if there is any
Question for her: do you have the guide?
I do have that. And I've
Okay.
actually read most of it.
yeah.
Um, I would like more practice in in talking and listening with the GMRS radios or the ham and relaying. And I can see maybe that would be something of use to a marginal person who's not contributing as much. I know that you're asking for lots more help, and I'm just saying it's probably not going to be me.
Well, and Lois, I think one of the things, and I know I've talked to some other people who have that same concern because their ability to consistently contribute time is not there. But I think what we're all aiming towards is if we get to that situation where we need to have the network up and going because we're in an emergency,
Right.
if anyone who's in your position or any other position at that point has enough familiarity with what the communications network is, then you would be able to fill in whatever part. And I think within any given neighborhood, another set of ears and another voice, another person who can pass along a message becomes important, even if it's only one message you're able to pass on. And, I'm in an area where I've got a very small geographical area where I can communicate with the FRS people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of figure even though it's a small area for that area, at least the things can come through. In terms of the time uh, and getting the practice, do you think that having more just kind of drill type activities where you could practice passing on a message or relaying information would be useful for you personally?
I do, because I think in some kinds of really big emergency, even the network that you have is going to partially collapse, and you're going to rely on people who haven't been working with you, but anybody who has the paths, the connections, and knows how to relay messages would be useful. And at that point, you might call in all kinds of hams that aren't connected to any organization, but apparently there are hundreds of them around here. And at that point, they would all be useful and would want to be. But if they don't know how your organization works, they'd be less useful. And they could even be trouble. They could get in
Yeah.
the way.
So do you think you have a clear enough understanding of in your particular area what the kind of the hierarchical structure is about who you would be listening from and who you would be communicating to?
I
Is
so
okay.
because I would try to get to the central person who's usually sitting on College Hill, but not anymore. And then they would connect to the next layer and the next layer. And I wouldn't call directly into Eugene EmComm. I would try to get to my local people.
Yeah. But you do have a feeling for who that local person would be and how to reach them.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So a question I have, and this is something I've talked to Andy about a lot. I think definitely having drill simulations is very useful for all of us. A chance to just go through those steps and to communicate with the people that would be part of our structure. Another thing I've asked him about, and I don't know the answer to this, in addition to that, if there were, say, on the website, a video of a um, communications drill showing how someone would receive a report from a damage assessment team, how you would then relay that to the next person in the radio hierarchy, would having a chance to watch a brief video on that also help your understanding, or is the drill a more important way?
Oh, I think both, but the video sounds interesting because you could play it again and again and you could hear, okay, how do you say that? What kind of words do you use for this or that? And so yeah, I think that's a good idea, both of them.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad I've got those recorded. We can share
I
that.
forgot you were recording, but it's
Oh,
okay.
quite all right.
I got that.
I have on my make you look fascinating and beautiful filter. So everybody's going to look great.
I
So
bet you don't, but okay.
I wish I had one. I would use it all the time. Thanks, Lois. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Other ideas? Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm the definition of a newbie. I think I've listened to 2 EmComm calls. I don't know if I've been on one. So, I mean, my personal challenge, which I don't know if the group can really address, but just for perspective, is just I'm a new ham. So there's just the, gaining familiarity with all the protocols and things, but also just, personal time constraints. So working all day and then getting home and dealing with dinner and all other things. And then it's like 7 o'clock rolls around. I'm like, ah. So it's just I'm personally finding it hard to plug in. I mean, my work life is getting a little slower now, so I hope to be able to be more consistent. But just life is busy, and it's not something we can address. I don't know if I think something like I work with Nancy, and our committee we have our core group of folks, but I think Nancy actually brought up the idea of having just specific topics and things. So I don't know if that would be helpful for the EmComms to know ahead of time, like what are we talking about, and just kind of draw people in based on certain topics of interest, or even topics that might help new people kind of acclimate to the calls, the net. So it's just
Yeah.
a
And
couple
that,
ideas on the top of my head, but
no, and that's kind of where we're going with this
okay.
is maybe trying to identify some of those topics. Some of them we do cover or have covered in the past on the Wednesday night nets, but the problem with those is they are transitory. I mean, happens on that net, and anybody who can't make that net didn't hear it. We have played around with ways of trying to record the nets and have been less than successful in doing that. And the other issue with that is the nugget that you might want is probably only 2 minutes, maybe. And then there's, an hour of other things, all the check-in stuff. And so I know for me, trying to figure out how to make this information available, even if you had a thought as to what some of those topics were, uh, as narrow as you'd want to make them. I mean, if you could pass those along, part of my vision is to have on the training thing on eugeneemcomm.org just a list of topics, which would have information which could just be read on the net, or in cases where it's more appropriate, like I was talking with Lois here a moment ago, where a video explanation would be more appropriate, to just have all that information, but in as unified a location as we can, so that should you feel uncomfortable about, okay, how do I announce myself when I'm making the radio call? What words do I use? Whose call sign do I say first? I mean, all that kind of stuff, which is knowable, but you have to find it. And I don't know, and I'll ask you the same question. Would it be useful for you to have that? I mean, would the website be a reasonable place to do that? Or is it better for you to get that as, say, part of the nets on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I guess I have to think about that. I mean, certainly there's also the Monday net that helps with that as well. Yeah, I don't have any thoughts off the top of my head though. I was wondering, do you know how do people find Eugene EmComm? Do you know what the website traffic is? Is that a good place to disseminate information? Do you have any idea of the metrics on?
I don't have the current
how
numbers, but it does receive a fair amount of traffic, enough that I had to increase I had only a certain amount of traffic assigned to it, and I've had to bump it up. So and it does come up, even though I've not done anything to bump up where it shows up in search results. It does come up if people search for emergency communications in Eugene or even just Oregon, it's one of the first things to pop up, which has surprised me and made me very happy. But it's also made me a little self-conscious and worried about it because I feel it's still fairly limited in what's on there. It started off, not that you need the whole history, but just for Northeast neighbors, I put it together as a place to share the PDFs of like the 213 and the 309 and the ICS forms we use. Because we were emailing those back and forth, and that got crazy because we'd have a revision, and some people get the revision, other email, other people wouldn't. And so I decided this might be I have the problem of being a carpenter and the whole world looks like a nail. I was a web person for years. And so it seems to me to be a reasonable solution. But
I guess
no,
just
that's,
one
yeah.
more thought, and this is more, I guess, I'm thinking in recruitment versus kind of how to onboard newbies, but just have you guys ever done any like PSAs or anything through radio and other places just to kind of get, just again, to raise awareness? I think raising awareness and broadening the scope of participants would also maybe make it more, I don't know, a lower bar of entry for newbies, because it would be.
Yeah, historically,
Good
we
company, so.
we did have one PSA that ran in a very limited fashion this 2 or 3 years ago. I actually have a meeting that I'm going to be going to with KLCC's news director and their public service person to do a combination of, we're going to put together some PSAs for we have an upcoming FRS training that is going to be via Zoom starting June, whatever the 4th Wednesday is. And we're hoping to get PSAs run for that, and also see if we can arrange for an interview probably with Andy ahead of that on KLCC. And there are probably other places other than KLCC we ought to do as well. Yeah, Nancy, you see a hand there?
Unmute. So, one question I have right off the top is, you just said that the 4th Wednesday FRS GMRS training was going to start in June, and I thought Andy said at the EmComm meeting this week that it would start this month on the 4th Wednesday of May. Was that incorrect?
I'm pretty sure it's the June, but let me make myself a note and I will talk to him this afternoon and verify that. Because yeah, the notes we had when we had the meeting about the PSAs, June 24th or whatever it is, was the date he was talking about there. So, and
Right.
Thea's got a hand up as well. Do you recall that?
I heard June as well. I put it in my calendar that night
Okay.
during the net as the 26th.
Okay.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it would be that,
Yeah.
whatever that 4th
Okay.
Wednesday is.
Okay.
And also,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that we've had a number of public booths up at events such as the Santa Clara Wildflower Festival. And
How did that go, by the way? The Wildflower Festival.
well, Andy pulled the plug on it because it was so cold and rainy and he didn't think attendance would be very high. So we all turned around on our way there. I'm so sorry, Matt, that you were the one that showed up there and went to all that trouble. There were periods of sun and it might have been usable. CERT was there, Northwest Ready was there. It's just we wimped out. But Barbara was willing to go, and she'd never done it before, and she was going to manage the whole thing. I just offered to help her, and so we're both not very young anymore, and I thought it was very kind of him to be concerned about our health and welfare and under that situation. However, we also had booths at the Friendly summer picnic and the eWeb water emergency training thing, where you can come and get your free jugs for water, and other places I can't remember now. So each time we've had a booth, we've signed up like 10 or 12 people interested in learning more and sent them emails and things like that. So there, and then Mike has made these wonderful buttons we can wear, and we can wear those all over town. Ask me about it or whatever. So yeah, definitely there could be more outreach. I try to do what I can on Facebook and next door to advertise things. And we do have a another email list, a Google group for people that are interested that anybody can join or comment on. It's not very active, but it is another way of providing information out there.
Yeah, no, yeah. Thea's got the one email list, and I think Andy maintains another one. And if you're not on either one of those, if any of you want to contact Thea or Andy to get on them, I found those very useful. Of course, those are inside the existing group, and it's that we've discussed, I think, the entire time of our existence, that difficulty of getting information out. We do have in the booth when we do the community events there, we always have the QR code out there so people can get to the website from that rather easily. But I'm hoping that maybe getting some more radio help would be useful. I'm continuing to mourn the slow death of our newspapers. In the olden days, I think we could have gotten the Register Guard to provide some help, but even though the Register Guard is there, I don't know that there's that many people that look at it. But yeah, outreach is a problem. Yeah, Nancy.
Well, I have some thoughts just back on one of your original things was about training, and because I am fairly new, I have been able, because I'm retired, like Karen, I've been able to attend the Zoom calls fairly regularly, perhaps too regularly, because somehow I became a district net control. And other than last year's citywide drill, I was like holding on by my fingernails to get through that, because I really didn't understand the role. I don't know whether it's my role to reach out to the 4 neighborhoods in my district that have yet to, there 2 of which have yet to show up for anything, and maybe spread information to them. I'm just not sure, because it's never been spelled out what my role is, other than transmitting messages in a real disaster. So, and I'm also not, at this point, not fully equipped to even do that necessarily, but we're getting there. The other thing also was when I first came on, I got my license, I started coming in on the calls, and I read that guide cover to cover, and there was so much new language in it, in terms, and I really struggled to maintain by the next section what I'd gotten in the first section, because I struggled with the language, which is, when there's new terms, you should have seen me in chemistry. It just doesn't work. It takes a while for me to memorize all that stuff. So that would be very helpful to go through that and pick out that stuff that's maybe not facile, for people to pick up on and understand. Also, I've been very confused going through. I really thought I understood how things were going to get transmitted. And I remember in my first citywide drill last year, I transmitted messages that I thought rose to the height of being critical, that I'd want to share with somebody, and was quickly admonished and told, no, those were not significant enough. So it was like, is that clearly spelled out in that manual? And should it not? That would be a good thing to review. And I know Andy did that once right after that drill, but it's like, that would be maybe a good thing to repeat, or to really have a clearer document on it. Also, there's not like a clear standard way of knowing in a real disaster. People have stuff they're doing, they're checking their neighbors if they're map your neighborhood group. They're moving around, and who is going to just sit there and monitor? Probably none of us. Do we have standardized check-in times at the top of the hour for 10 minutes? You can reach somebody, because it seems like when I've talked to other neighbors, everybody sort of has a different plan. And maybe that's okay, but I just want to know, can I make my own plan? because if people are, I noticed during the citywide drill, that the only two neighborhoods in my district were just coming at me constantly. And it was really hard to deal with these forms and get everything down right so that I could translate it. I felt a lot of pressure that something was gonna blow up because I didn't get the information to the city fast.
Are you handwriting things on the ICS 213 forums? Is that what you mean?
Well, if the person relaying was giving it to me very clearly, I could put it right on the ICS, but I also had a notepad right there, and sometimes I just write on that and deal with it later. I just write on it and put the critical things and then fill it in. But I also kind of wanted to be able to keep track of the numbering system, and I tried to pre-number my forms. So that would be a good thing to go over. The other thing that, well, I've thrown a lot of stuff out there. The only thing else I would like to say is that about this new idea of fourth Wednesday to be for FRS, GMRS, that something that Andy said in announcing that, and obviously I could have gotten it all wrong since I didn't get the date right, but that I need to be able, I think the good thing was it would be a great way to engage people in the community in my neighborhood that, let's say, don't want to be on my team, but would love to understand the process. And I wasn't clear if every time, and I think Karen alluded to this, that every Wednesday, is it going to be the same agenda, trying to catch new people each time? Or are you going to have a very finite plan that can be shared with the community so they know what to expect, and I might be able to engage them more? So I'll stop there because I've
And I've kind of been taking notes. You've been talking here because you've headed some things that are ones I've worried about too. I want to go back to one of the earlier, you were talking about the terminology. One of the things that's not on EmComm yet, but I've been preparing it, is a glossary for exactly that reason. Now, there is a glossary in the back of the radio communications guide, but it doesn't necessarily have the things that I know I struggled with at first. And I'm going to make a request of you on that, Nancy. If you would be able to see if you could maybe compile just a brief list of some of the things that you struggled with at first and pass those along so I could include those in that glossary I'm working on, that would be really helpful. And anyone else listening too, if there's been terminology that you've bumped up against that has caused you consternation or questions, if you could pass those along, that is something that will be posted up there, I hope, within the next couple of months is my goal. The
Mike,
other, yeah,
go
ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment that the recent EmComm nets have been a little weak because we've been at it 3 years or more and have done a lot of the topics. We're going to talk about this tonight, and we actually go the full hour and all that. And so I think there's a little bit of fatigue, but I think both Karen and Nancy's suggestions to have a topic and advertise it ahead of time is excellent. It really would help a lot. And if we can find somebody to do the topic and be available. I've petered out myself in volunteering to be net control. I had radio problems and other things going on where I didn't feel like I'd be reliable in that role, but I admit to not stepping up. Sometimes the discussions, the ones I led, were based off something in the guide. Let's go over this, or let's do a test and see who can answer it. And but a better glossary is really a good idea. I still struggle with the term radio leader or radio team leader. That's very hard for me to compute because we have a radio team but no leader, and it's just not how friendly area works. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think both you and I probably are thinking the same thing on that, where some of that terminology over the course of time we've been involved has rolled over and changed to where the way we used a term 3 years ago got changed somewhere along the way. And a lot of us I know I'm still thinking in terms of some of that original terminology we had. And then I hear the new words and I'm thinking, oh, is this a new thing? And I realize, no, it's the old thing. We've just calling it something new. And that's hard to keep track of.
There's one other thing I wanted to say was that even though a Valley Radio Club and we have share some of the same members and same activities, the Monday night Now What Net is really excellent for people, new hams to monitor, or old hams. I think I've been attending 5 years guiltily because that's basically all I do is just a couple nets a week. But just recently, the Valley Radio Club's emergency manager leader referred to Eugene EmComm net as a CERT net. And it did start out that way, but I think that's something that's also inhibiting our growth and recruitment for people to assume it's just for CERT hams.
And maybe you can help me out on understanding a little bit more about this, because I've been curious about this a lot. My schedule does not allow me to make Fridays usually, and so I have yet to go to a Valley Radio Club meeting. But I have never understood why we are not operating under their auspices. It seems to me to make perfect sense. I mean, I know we have, the city of Eugene's, bestowed a pat on the head for us to do what we're doing. But why we're not connected more directly with the Valley Radio Club. And I know I've heard some stories, and Matt, you might know about this too. Apparently there have been some issues between some of the people in Valley Radio Club and some people involved with Eugene EmComm that have prevented that from happening. But I don't know. Do either of you have any feeling about what happened there?
I don't know if it should be discussed on a recording.
Oh, okay. Tell you what, we'll make that a side discussion, and thank
All
you.
right.
I haven't really been aware of any big hurdles or barriers, but yeah, I don't know why. I've been waiting a long time for the Valley Radio Club to get its emergency radio group going, and even its subset of the Reflector voice or email group, and it just hasn't happened. Matt, I don't know if you want to say anything more.
Not on recording, no.
Okay. We will make that a mystery until we can speak privately then, I guess. Okay, a couple other things, Nancy, I want to refer back. I was having empathy pangs when you were talking about just knowing kind of where you fit in. When I first came on board, I felt like I had no idea who I should be listening to, and once I listened to them, where it should go from there, and just the structure. And I don't know if you were able to be on the 213 Zoom we did a few months back, but it was at my insistence that Andy was not convinced about it, but that we did a structural, here's the damage assessment team. They have a radio team leader. They talk to the neighborhood ham. They talk to, the EOC. And that, I know Andy's been concerned about doing that. Part of the reason being, in an emergency, that structure may fall apart because one link in the chain is missing. But I think my feeling is I would like to have available a very clear picture, especially for new folks, that if you're a neighborhood ham person, you're going to also be holding an FRS radio tuned to your neighborhood FRS channel, and knowing that a good part of your time is going to be listening on that FRS channel. Then talking on the ham radio to your district ham, who's going to be talking on the radio to the EOC. Coming back to your comment about last fall's exercise, we all got blindsided by the new emergency manager's statement of, oh, none of this stuff rises to the level of reporting. And I know that Andy's had discussions with her since, and this hasn't necessarily been widely disseminated, but what came out of that was all of us who are lower in the tree continue to do what we've always done. If the, porch on a house fell down and we hear screaming inside, we still report that even though we're not sure somebody's injured or trapped. And what the person whose responsibility that becomes is the district ham. And before they transmit it to the OC, they're going to assign the priorities based on their understanding of the 213s. But for the rest of us, we don't winnow it out. I mean, clearly, if somebody's sprinkler system is broken, we're not going to report that. But anything else that seems like help is required, outside help is required, we would report upstream and not worry about prioritizing it. The district hams have to figure that out. And we just continue. Does that help your concern on that one?
Well, perhaps that was my understanding, but my understanding about what I would transmit as the district ham was not, I wasn't clear on just the fact that I was going to only report like a broken gas main or something that was going to blow up and cause huge amount of damage, and that everything else could wait.
When you are that district ham, aren't you?
Yes, and that is why I'm asking.
Okay, so I'm going to make this one in capital letters. We need to have a
very clear understanding.
Discussion amongst district hams that clarifies how you apply that priority.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not in your shoes on that one, but I can understand. I'm the neighborhood ham, so I send it up to our district ham. Yeah.
Well, and it's because I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate something you'd said earlier, that also we need to have an idea of what a district ham does.
Yeah.
I don't think ours have ever been expected to do any recruiting or promoting in the neighborhoods. That's ideally would be great, but it seemed like we've been more of a bottoms up growing organization where each neighborhood's supposed to get their little team together and then try to connect to the district as they can. So the role of a district NC really does need to be defined. Nancy's right.
Yeah, well, I think also what you just said, Thea, about each neighborhood is responsible for kind of creating their own group. They need a tool to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at, we have 2 neighborhoods and they don't necessarily even meet that often. So what can we do to at least get them? And I'm thinking that's why I was getting the idea of spreading the word to those people that live in those neighborhoods somehow, maybe if they do a newsletter or something, to let them know that, oh, if you go camping a lot and you've got an FRS radio,
yep,
want to learn how to use it for emergencies,
yep,
come to this Zoom call. Then we might get some people that within these neighborhoods that say, oh, what, you mean there's a structure that we could develop and maybe it could go from there.
Right. That's
So,
what Friendly did. We just started putting out announcements and holding. It was all about Zoom by then in 2020, and just getting people together and then figuring out how to organize exercises. But we used Nextdoor and the neighborhood newsletter. Friendly is very active with its MailChimps and newsletters and things like that. So we had that benefit to ride along. And I'm facing the same challenge now that I'm moving into Far West neighborhood and leaving Friendly. I got one foot in each, and while I'm in transition for the next 6 months or so, but they don't have any radio team. They just started a new board and had their first general meeting Tuesday night, and I don't really want to. I'm not ready to jump in as a to start their new emergency preparedness team after 7 years working with Friendlies. So I'm going to wait probably 6 months to offer to start a radio team there, but it will be the same challenge, and probably we'll try the same techniques of saying, hey, if you're an outdoors person and have these kind of radios. So this is a way to use them at home and practice to use them for an emergency.
So we will have you checking in from West Eugene in a while, huh?
Well, yeah, I don't know if they call it, it's the far west neighborhood, but it's just, I'm moving 3 blocks west of Chambers.
Yeah.
It's not very far west. But hopefully, yeah, there'll be some Southwest check-ins.
We'll finally have some check-ins, right?
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, there seems to be some debate over the point of ICS 213s, whether you fill them out on paper and send them over voice, which I find to be agonizingly slow, and using other methods such as WinLink. Yeah, I think WinLink, VARA WinLink especially, is the way to go. And there's some discontent at the upper tiers about doing this.
And I can tell you just, and I have limited access, but I do know that Andy has committed to making that a kind of a thrust behind the scenes, not for the entire group. And I know that Jerry Brown is kind of spearheading that. And you've been working with Jerry on that as well, I know.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the idea is to try to get it up and running and working successfully and testing it. And I know one of Andy's concerns is he wants to test it as far as the EOC, just to get so that you can kind of do a proof of concept saying, we actually did this. We took a report from a neighborhood and we sent it by way of WinLink all the way to the EOC, and it got there. And if we can get to that place and then create a way to start training everybody how that works, ultimately it could be an ideal way to do that. And I'm not sure how familiar people are with that concept, but WinLink basically is using ham radio signals as a way to transmit not your voice, but data. And the initial data device can be your phone, even if the phone system is down. And this is, I know, may sound convoluted and complex, but ultimately, and the idea behind this kind of test that Matt and Jerry are working on is to kind of prove that it works. And so we can build up a way to teach people how to do it. And I think, and Matt, check me here, but I think once you know how it works, it does require a little bit of additional equipment, but not a lot. But it becomes actually an easier way to do things, because instead of filling out the paper 213, you're able to do an electronic version. And once you hit send, no other human worries about it except the EOC. And that's the idea, is that for us as either neighborhood hams or district hams, in Nancy's case, would take in information reported to us, use WinLink to record it as opposed to the paper form. And then at that point, it becomes an electronic distribution. But for right now, and I'm just to maybe allay people's concerns, don't worry about that as an extra layer to learn, because we're going to wait until it's ready for prime time before we start expecting people to begin learning about it, and make sure that we've got a way to learn about it that makes sense. And hopefully, in terms of the hardware parts of it, a way for that to be provided to the people that need it, so that people aren't having to go out of pocket if it does require some hardware. So, Nancy?
Well, because I know nothing really about WinLink except that it exists, and I knew how to answer it on my test. That's about it. But what I don't understand is, does it function exactly like a computer would in terms of saving that data? So
Yeah,
going back in time, I can connect it from the district and communicate back to my neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, you just have to know
yeah, you don't have to really explain. I'll learn
the call sign of the station you want to go back to. It works just basically just like email.
Mhm. So it's saved.
Yeah, it's saved. You can even uh, select what messages you want to show up in an ICS 309 form, and boom, generate an ICS 309 form automatically. Yeah.
So ultimately, once it gets figured out and tested, it should make our lives easier instead of more complex. We're hoping.
Yes, it
Oh.
does require quite a bit of computer knowledge, but yeah, once you get it arranged, it is a lifesaver.
Yeah, and that's coming soon to a theater near you. Probably not real soon, but it's the goal is to get it tested and kind of documented, and then after we know how to share about it, begin training and sharing. And that's one coming back to your thought, Thea. At that point, that might become what happens on some of the Wednesday night nets is they become a place to practice and work on WinLink things. But again, that's in the future somewhere.
I think Craig Cherry did a WinLink presentation at the last Valley Radio Club meeting. I don't go to them now that they're in person because it's just too late in the evening and too far for me to drive comfortably.
Yeah,
But
Jerry and Craig did a
oh,
pretty shallow overview of it, but it was not bad.
I wish it had been recorded.
Yeah.
And I asked Jerry
Craig's
if
active in the EmComm when he can be. Yeah.
I asked Jerry if he would be able to maybe like just do a phone video of their presentation or something like that, but I haven't talked to him since. So I don't know. And also he said he'd be willing to work with me on putting together a video presentation that we could post on the website too. So that's a possibility. And that would be part of the introducing people to it.
I was
Later.
just going to suggest that
Yeah.
coming to a theater near you to do a video, actually a video tour of your website, because it has grown so much and has so much that, or just a slideshow, you know how they do when you sign up for an app, this is what you have and what you can do on it. Something like that might be helpful as well, a website intro.
Okay, I'm going to make myself a note on that one here. And that could just be on the front page for people that are trying to find their way around.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
Dan,
great idea. I like that.
I saw Dan joined us. Does he have any thoughts, or is he still on? He was there briefly.
Not that I'm hearing. Okay. So one question I have, I lean towards having most of this available online just because it's accessible to anywhere or anyone, and it's not time bound, that people would be able to look at it at any time. But what do people think is there would there be a place for every, say, quarter or every 6 months to put together an in-person orientation for people that are new to the group?
I
Would
would
that be
say every quarter.
every quarter? Would that be of value?
Yes.
Other thoughts?
Every quarter is asking too much of volunteers who would end up compiling it.
But the idea of the in-person thing resonates for you, Thea, other than the timing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't catch you said in person. I was thinking a video still.
Oh,
Yeah, what Matt's saying every quarter, perhaps. Apologize.
yeah. So Northeast does have set aside a training time, which is every second Saturday, which has been used, as most of you are aware, for entire group things on occasion. And I might suggest to Andy that one of those, maybe quarterly, become an orientation meeting for new people in person. And we do have a location for it. It's over here at the Norkenzie Community Church on Crescent Avenue. And that would be definitely possible to do. And we could, certainly people that have been with the organization would also be welcome. It could just also serve as a general in-person question and answer time. And it occurs to me that one advantage there is too, is if you've got a question about your radio and you're new to your radio, there sometimes are people there that could walk you through just some technical problems with your equipment as well. So am I seeing kind of consensus on it would be wise to have in-person orientations as well as the online things?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Karen has a hand up.
Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, similar to that, I was thinking, well, I guess the question, is there any follow-up that is done when somebody new joins the EmComm net?
Not really. Well, I take that back. There is kind of what happens, and usually, uh, speaking for the website, we get people who contact us through the contact form. And if their message is, gosh, I didn't know you existed, what can I do? Andy almost always takes those and either does a direct contact if they've left a phone number, and people uh, can leave the email address. And then both of us usually contact the person via email. And Andy, then if he does a phone call, will get information um, from them about, their neighborhood and what they are already doing. And I know in various cases, he's put them in touch then with somebody in their neighborhood who's already involved. But that process depends on, do they contact us via the contact form? And people that just, run into somebody else, in conversation, there's no definite way of doing that. So I would encourage everyone listening right now that if you're aware of somebody that's become involved or wants to be involved, to take that step of formalizing it with the contact form. And that way they will get a call from Andy and at least get them started on the road. And then hopefully, based on what we're doing here today, we'll be able to point them to maybe an orientation meeting and an online orientation as well to help get them up to speed.
Mhm. Yeah, I was thinking for some folks, it might, be beneficial to have a specific mentor in a sense, either within their neighborhood or somewhere else who, to whom they can just periodically ask questions. And because it's, if you're on the whole net, sometimes it can be, at least for a newbie, it's, it can be somewhat intimidating, especially if you're new to ham radio operation as well. So it might
That,
be something,
that's,
to offer folks.
yeah, that's a great idea. No, I think if we were to put them in contact with someone that would kind of serve as their mentor to be available for questions, and none of us know all the answers, but most of us know who to contact for the
Right,
answer.
right.
I mean, Matt's our guy for a lot of technical stuff. So, Lois?
I think a mentor is a really important thing, and I never had one, and so I have lots of questions, and I ask one or two questions at a net, but that's not what it's for. It's not to answer all my questions all at once, and they can't show me things on the net. And what I really always needed was a personal mentor that wouldn't mind every question that I asked. You could take all the questions. He would be there when I had a question, not just at a time when everybody can have one question. So that's been a problem for me, and it would have been a great help all the way along the line.
I agree. I love that idea. And I think it's more comfortable to ask what you think of as a stupid question one-on-one. I know whenever we do one of these sessions online, I will occasionally get emails from people saying, it was a stupid question, but, and then they will send the question. And, more often than not, it wasn't a stupid question.
But in a net situation, you're only allowed one or two stupid questions, and you better get on with it and let other people have a chance. So it's not as good as a mentor would be.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that all of Lois's questions have been very welcome and very excellent, and I've learned a lot from them each time, and I hope you don't try to limit yourself too much in the future either. Especially if nobody else is talking. I mean, you got the floor.
But they are, so yeah, everybody wants to talk. So,
Well, and sometimes you just have questions after the fact. At least, like for me, I process things, and then afterwards, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that would have been a good question to ask." Or just having that person to
and it would
connect
have
with
come
would be
up
helpful.
if you
for that.
were with a mentor, because you would have had a back and forth exchange, and you would have thought of something else depending on that person's answer. And yeah, one question at a time just doesn't get you there.
Yeah, well,
Also, if you're able to go into the after hours simplex net, then you've got a smaller audience with more people in your district if to just chat back and forth.
Yeah.
And you've joined ours, as I know. It's been nice.
yeah, Nancy.
Moving out of my contact range. Because you were very hard to reach as it is, and so now you're moving, or are you gonna orient yourself better with College Hill so that you're not behind?
I'll be in a different simplex net for sure. So yeah, we have our fan nets and I won't yeah, for the rest of this year I'll be on that one because I'll still be a property owner here, even though I'm downsizing and moving over to a former home that's smaller. Thank you though. Really glad you've been able to join us, Lois.
Yeah, Nancy.
I was just going to say that when I got started, because of proximity and Friendly's reputation, I started calling Thea all the time and emailed her a lot. So she kind of became a mentor, even though I'm not sure we had that language going. But it was very, very helpful to know that when something came up that made absolutely no sense, I knew someone I could email and get a very thoughtful response from. So thank you, Thea.
So big picture, I'm hearing, and I really like the idea of kind of a three-headed orientation system that would consist of an in-person orientation that we would put together as frequently as we could, quarterly, whatever makes sense. Secondly, have resources available online so that people could do some of the learning or getting questions answers asynchronously at their convenience. And then thirdly, assigning people a mentor so that they have a person that they can contact. Is that what everybody else is hearing?
Yeah, all of that, and in the online resources, videos of almost everything that you can think of.
I love that idea. I love playing with video. So give me an opportunity to play in the mud. Okay, well, I think looking at my little outline here, that's generally speaking, and so we'll just open it up. Nancy?
I just wanted to go back and see if you actually know this. It may be something I have to get from Andy, but in terms of these FRS, GMRS monthly Zoom sessions, do we have a concept of whether those are going to be repeated or whether there really will be different trainings, one about devices, one about process, one about, I just want to, it would be helpful, I think, for neighborhoods to be able to solicit people if they knew what they were going to sign on for, but I don't know whether this group has the answer to that question.
Well, I can address that a little bit in that I talked to Andy about exactly that thing. I'm going to be partly responsible for those trainings, and my initial thought was, oh my God, where do I start? Where do we? And my suggestion to Andy was that the very first one we do in June be similar to what we're doing here today, in that we would invite anybody that has their FRS radio, and even those of us that aren't primarily FRS people, to come onto the Zoom call and make it essentially an open question forum initially, after an introduction, because we do need come on, mouth. We do need to provide part of that picture, Nancy, that you were talking about earlier. If I'm an FRS radio person, where am I and what am I fitting into? So I think part of the initial introduction is going to be a picture of, okay, here's what the chain of communication and information looks like. And here's where you're going to be on that chain. And here are some expectations of you if you're at that place on the chain. And I think Matt's got a page is that out of the radio resource guide?
No, it's out of the Lasaro's guide.
Oh, okay. All
So
right,
yeah, you got a hierarchy going on there.
great. Do you happen to have, do I have that document online? I'll have to ask you.
It is online. It is at lasaro.org.
Okay. Would you mind,
LC.
could you send me that link and I can put that link on EmComm?
Sure.
That'd be great. And I do have a couple of pictures that we've used for other things, but that would be helpful in putting that together. But Nancy, back to your question. So that session is going to be first putting people just visually in the picture, describing generally what their responsibilities would be, and then opening it up for questions on the first one. And we're hoping that opening it up for questions will identify what can then become topics. And then we will publish a listing of, okay, here's what we're going to cover in July, and here's what we're going to cover in August. And also it allows us then maybe to assign that to people to facilitate the sessions who are more expert in that area than perhaps others. I mean, if it came down to radio hardware for the FRS radios, I wouldn't necessarily want to be doing it, but maybe Matt would. And
what am I doing allegedly?
well, no, I'm using you as an example right now, just that we would try to get people to facilitate the FRS sessions kind of based on their area of interest and expertise. And then the topics will go sometimes with a person. If at some point the topic is, how does the EOC use all this stuff? Maybe we could get Sierra to come in from the city, the city emergency coordinator, and
Yeah.
talk to the FRS people about, here's what we would like to see you doing, and here's what we expect of you.
Okay.
But yeah, Nancy, that is our being Andy and myself and Jerry Brown frequently works with us on kind of brainstorming for Northeast and Northwest. That's a big concern right now, is we want to have some structure, but also have some space for questions, because we realize we probably will have new people every month that are starting from zero. And we want to make sure that we can give those people a place to start, similarly to what we're trying to do here today for other folks. So part of the idea with what we're doing today is it would not necessarily limit itself to ham people, but any radio people, including FRS or GMRS people that are part of Eugene EmComm, that training could be effective for anybody. And then the Wednesday night nets on the fourth Wednesdays would be specific opportunities for those people to ask questions and get some information.
Thank
You mean the Wednesday night Zooms?
Zooms, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
The
Yeah,
brain
thank you.
the brain functions differently than it used to, and
I
the
think you're doing great. You're really able to, summarize and organize what we're talking about here. I
as
did want
long
to say that there is one thing that's confuses me is referring to damage assessment teams. There's been some history of assuming that we have each team exists all the time. And I don't see that really being the case. To me, it's a on the spot forming.
I am with you on that, and that's been one of my biggest complaints. And I live in a neighborhood where there is no team. I'm in my immediate neighborhood. Now, one of the FRS groups that reports to me does, but on my street and the streets nearby, there's nothing. And we have neighborhood picnics once a year, and I go around to people saying, hi, I'm Mike, and yes, I do have the white picket fence, but also I have a ham radio, and in emergencies, I'm available to help with communications. Are you interested, by the way, in becoming part of a team that would help us look for things up and down the street? And I, get smiles and nods, but nobody's yet volunteered to kind of step up and take that on as their task.
But when it happens, they'll all be piling into the street and running around trying to do it. So yeah, it's anyway, just once again, it's the terms and the roles and how to define them, I guess. We get back into the weeds here.
Yeah. Well, and I asked that question specifically once when both Andy and Sierra were available about whether I should, be going out myself and looking for things if nobody's reporting to me. And the response I got was, you need to be in a place where people know where you are
Hmm.
and wait. So I figured that's my role. I won't be going down the street and looking. I'll be here waiting for people to knock on my door.
As the neighborhood ham radio leader or.
Right. And that's right. Speaking to that specific role, which is different, Nancy, than your district ham or the FRS people.
That's right. Go where you're expected to go, where you've agreed to go, and
Yeah.
stay there. Pretty much.
When I can share.
If
I know
if you publish a frequency, monitor it always.
Yeah. I can share with you that the suggestion's been made, and Andy's talking to the city about it, about perhaps choosing locations that would be convenient for especially neighborhood hams and district hams that might be better. I mean, in my case, I'm right down the street from Cal Young Middle School. And Andy's suggestion was, well, maybe I could just go set up, in the front of Cal Young Middle School so that I'm easy to get to and very visible. And that's going to be a topic for them to discuss. We don't have to think about it till they discuss it, but as opposed to me being in a house that may be partially collapsed on a street somewhere. Well, any other topics, Nancy?
Well, this is something I think Karen and I have talked about, in terms of having a central location for the neighborhood, for Fairmount neighbors to actually set up a common place is tricky. We don't have schools within our area. And because we go from the river to 30th, and there's this giant park in the middle, and so the terrain is very rough. What we have found is that the people that live up near 30th can't be heard by the people down on the other side of the park, down where it's flat. That's been very consistent. I'm able right now, because personally I own a mobile GMRS, and I have a mag mount antenna I put up outside so that I can actually hear everybody. But in terms of placing that, not at my home, but at, which may blow up, or certainly if there was an earthquake, it would be gone. I can guarantee it. That we would have some central place, is I just don't get it, because near us, we have Laurelwood Golf Course. But the people that live, let's say, from Fairmount down to the river, they can't get there necessarily very easily if trees are down and blocking roads and stuff. So we've been kind of, not really officially, but we've been kind of pondering, should there be kind of like 2 hubs or something, so that these 2 different areas can somehow have a central place to go and get help. But it doesn't follow that model,
Yeah.
We've also been debating the idea of having caches of supplies stored somewhere. Just get one of those shipping containers and fill it with supplies and have it ready to go. But I don't know how that would work.
I think they did something like that in Southeast.
Well, the shipping containers are like $3,000, plus you gotta get a permit and find a place to site them. We looked into it in Friendly, and it's just too much. But I liked, Southeast has the 10 cargo boxes they distributed in their 10 areas.
How'd they pull that off?
With a neighborhood matching grant. And I have all the information that Don wrote, and I participated in 3 meetings. We were going to do the same in Friendly and submit them almost together, but I couldn't get the support. People were anyway. It was we weren't ready to do ours yet. We still hope. I did want to say that Friendly with the College Hill in the middle has often planned on having 2 hubs. That's why we divided into quarters, and we have places like that we assume would be available. ATA Graham Field on the west, and there's kids sports and other places on the east side, but you kind of do what you have to do with your neighborhood terrain and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping our new Eugene emergency manager has some of those things on her docket, because I think we all have that same concern. And I do know Andy and she are talking about it, but hopefully they'll report back and let us know. But yeah, that's a worry. And I think one we share, all of us. Any other thoughts?
I wish Barbara had been here. I think she was the one that suggested that this was needed.
And I
If,
think she also mentioned that she was not available today, and she's one of the people who asked if it'd be recorded. So
Oh, okay, good. I was going to
yeah,
say I'd be happy to send her the link if she doesn't get it before.
yeah, and it'll be
Yeah.
up. It'll show up on the news page on the website. It'll probably take me a few hours to get it rendered and put together, but and I'll send. In fact, Thea, could I just send you an email, and then if you'd be able to use the Google group email
Sure.
perhaps to get information out, and Andy can send it out with the one he uses, and
Okay.
we can let
But
people know if they're interested.
I don't think you should do it today, though. Get out and
Oh.
enjoy the beautiful weather. There's no rush on this.
Yeah, I'm willing to look at that sunshine for a long time. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting this. It's
Well,
great.
thanks all of you. I'm feeling smarter than I did before 10 o'clock today.